Systems, systems, systems. We're hearing about systems transformation, food systems, climate systems, social justice systems, cultural, political, economic, social systems. But what does that mean? And especially, how do you move from systems framing, systems evidence, systems analysis, to systems synthesis, systemic synthesis? That's the focus of this video in offering what I consider an exemplar of a systems synthesis. But to set the stage, let me offer a brief clip from an interview that Eleanor Chelimsky did in inaugurating the 2013 forum in her honor, done by the Eastern Evaluation Research Society on balancing theory and practice in the real world. At the end of that hour-long interview, she was asked what she thought evaluation ought to look toward in the future. And here's what she said.
I think we have to look at evaluation in a more not systematic, but systemic way. We are systematic, but we're not systemic. We don't think of all of the world that we're functioning in. It isn't just a matter of thinking. It's a matter of understanding political trends. It's a matter of understanding the past. You know what Faulkner said, that marvelous thing, the past is never dead, it isn't even past. You know, it's...
With Eleanor Chelimsky's challenge as context, I want to highlight a recent blog written by Lisbeth Schorr that, for me, exemplifies what a systemic synthesis looks like. Now, to set the stage for that, let me review Lisbeth Schorr's early work on taking a systems perspective, and then highlight the way in which, in her blog, she exemplifies what I think is the hardest part of doing systemic work, and that is the synthesis, pulling it all together. But she's been working on systems issues for a long time. In her Common Purpose book, published in 2011, she had a section on the system. What are all these people talking about when they name the system as the villain? The system. The principal who says he can't hire the teachers who will improve student achievement because the system downtown won't let him. The director of the neighborhood center that can't send home visitors to provide both parent support and immunizations because the system won't permit mingling the grant funds. The child care director who can't read with the children because she has to spend her time meeting the system's paperwork requirements. The counselor who can't work with a 13-year-old runaway because the system limits her services to children who've been certified as abused. The child welfare worker who has to send 3 siblings to 3 different faraway foster families because the system won't let her keep the siblings together and in their own neighborhood. The president of a community development group that can't run a teen center because it doesn't meet the system's definition of an eligible sponsor. The system. Each of these people means something slightly different by the system, Lisbeth Schorr wrote, but they all know that it is something beyond their own control that keeps them from accomplishing valued social purposes. All have seen successful models flourish briefly in splendid isolation, only to disappear or be diluted when the special funding or special political protection ends, or when they run out of leaders who are willing to lie, cheat, and connive in order to make their interventions work in the face of a hostile system. Well, Lisbeth Schorr has brought her sensitivity and knowledge of systems to bear in the blog she wrote in June about ending child poverty in America. And while systems framing, systems analysis, systems evidence, systems reporting are all important, the highest challenge, the greatest challenge, is systems synthesis, integrating the evidence into a compelling, meaningful conclusion and story that captures the essence of the system's understanding. That's systemic synthesis. And Lisbeth Schorr has, in this blog about ending child poverty in America, An Impossible Dream, demonstrates what it's like to do a systemic synthesis. I recommend this because it captures the elements of systems synthesis in an overall conclusion that we now know how to end child poverty. Using the principles for effective use of systems thinking and evaluation developed by the American Evaluation Association Topical Interest Group, you can track the systemic elements of Lisbeth Schorr's synthesis. The systemic evaluation principles call for looking at interrelationships. In examining child poverty, Lisbeth Schorr looks at the relationships among different programs and policies and different aspects of poverty and child poverty. She looks at the boundaries that are drawn around programs and policies historically and to the present, and how poverty and the options and interventions are defined. She tracks the different perspectives about the nature of poverty. What are acceptable solutions? What are unacceptable approaches? And how that affects what is done. And she traces the dynamics of how this work has unfolded since the Great Society War on Poverty programs in the 1960s. It is putting all of this together in a synthesis that is so impressive. She writes, quote, "Given the weight of the evidence, the support, and the experience we have gathered over the last 2 decades, ending child poverty in America is no longer an impossible dream. It is a realistic objective that all of us who care about Americans' future can be working toward every day." And so I urge you to have a look at the blog, at the analysis, at the data, at the evidence, but most of all, the systemic synthesis that Lisbeth Schorr has created, the elegance and power of the writing and the story, the narrative, and the conclusion. It's an exemplar of systemic synthesis.